Hello Linux lovers, my name's Wimpy. We're going to do some Raspberry Pi stuff today. A bit overdue, got sidetracked with other things. So I work on a project called Ubuntu MATE, and it's a desktop operator, a Linux desktop operating system, and we also produce images for the Raspberry Pi. And I'm going to go over the mechanism and how we make that stuff. And it's a little bit different because we do that using ARM containers on an x86 PC, which sounds like complicated at first listen, but it's actually relatively straightforward. So that process has evolved. I've been making images like this. Well, I've been making images for the Raspberry Pi since 2015, something like that. And this process of how I do that has evolved, and I'm going to look at how I'm currently doing it, and I'll explain some of the ways it's evolved over time. Good morning, Yannick. Welcome to the stream. Congratulations on being first. Right, okay, I just want to take a quick look over here. Oh, I think I've got that one set up incorrectly, because that didn't fire for Takov the other day either. Oh, I know why that's not working. That's my fault. I don't have Atom running. Bad, Martin. Let's just check that that's all happy. There we go. Now I have Atom running. Oopsie. How can I do this? I learned a thing, actually. I can trigger this myself now. I know how to do this. So if I click this button here and scroll down here, I've figured out how to do things in on the fly. So if I do this, I think I can. This is the one you triggered, Yannick, like that. Whee! So I can temporarily go off and do these things now. So if I come back to where I am up here and now disable that, there we go. I can go and mess around. Morning, Jeff. Morning, Linux Paul. How you doing? So hopefully the other channel thingies will work now. Right, okay. Let's get into this then. So there's a couple of things I want to do today. One, it's basically a reminder for myself as well. So I wrote some tools to build these images. So I'm going to go through them, sort of explain how they work. And that will serve as a reminder to myself how this stuff actually functions, and then I'll explain where I go from here to do the next steps. And maybe tomorrow and over the weekend I'll get into more of the actually building and testing and what have you. Hey, doing in the UK? How you doing? Donning, sorry. Is it Donning? I really need to make some of the fonts bigger in these windows whilst I'm doing this stuff. Right, so let's just make everything a little bit bigger because clearly I can't see. Right, let's go to here. So the first thing we're going to look at is, well, where do you get the Raspberry Pi images for Ubuntu proper? And you get those from cdimage ubuntu.com, and you look in the releases folder for the given release, and you will find here that there are in fact several Raspberry Pi images. There's the one for the desktop, and then there is server images for what's called generic hard float, which is 32-bit ARM, and 64-bit ARM. So you can run with the optimizations that the 64-bit capabilities bring you. Hello, good morning, Scouting Nate. Thanks for stopping by. Which Pi are you using? You've just got the Pi 02. Oh, I am envious. So for this, I'm going to be initially using a Raspberry Pi 4. Let's just have a look. So if I go here, this is my setup. I'll just turn the chat off for a moment. So this is the Pi that I'm going to be using to do this initial work. It's a Raspberry Pi 4. I think it's an 8 gig model. And I've got that. There's power here, and this goes to an HDMI capture device over there. I'm going to do a little bit on the Pi today. Mostly I'm going to be explaining how the process of building the images is going to work. So that's how that's all gonna happen. So let's have a look here. Yannick says, oh, you've got a Pi 2, a 02 on the way. Nice. Yeah, I should probably get one to add to my collection of now 35 Raspberry Pis. gotta catch them all. Oh, you got yours yesterday. Yeah, I mean, they're good value. I hope the Raspberry Pi Foundation are making a little bit more margin on these new ones, because I know they were basically at cost value for the last iteration. So you've got Ubuntu Server 2110. Okay, well, Takov, so this will look a little bit familiar. So the way that these scripts work now actually take advantage of these, what are called pre-installed images, and we'll head over to the script and sort of explain how all of this works. Right, so Scouting Nate has the retro flag GPIK. So do I. I have one of those too. In fact, after this, if you're interested, a couple of videos back, I went through a massive box of Raspberry Pi stuff to figure out what I'd got and what I could make. And I think the count at the end of that was 35 Raspberry Pi and associated gubbins. And I'd say half of it is camera related projects that I'm going to make, and the other half of it is going to be retro console emulator type stuff. So yeah, there's a lot right in the shelves next to me, chock full of Raspberry Pi stuff here. And it's what I'm going to be doing mostly on this channel for the next few weeks. I sort of dip in and out of various projects that I'm working on, and at the moment I'm going to be on a Raspberry Pi streak for a bit. Specifically, first of all, getting the Ubuntu MATE images done, and then prepping for some of these other fun projects, but then having to go back to other projects that I maintain as well. So I swap around, but it's all Linux related dev and maker stuff here, with the occasional bit of gaming thrown in for good measure. Right then, also Super Cuba, thanks very much for stopping by. Welcome to the channel. Right, let's take a look then. So we've got VS Code up here somewhere. Here it is. So this is my script, and this has evolved over the years. And I'll just sort of start at the bottom, because that's sort of like the entry point, and I'll explain what's going on. So at the bottom of this script we have a process. So we have several stages of how the script functions. So stages 1 to 7. So we'll go through all of those, and then at the end, that's just a catch for the issue. So let's go and look at the first piece of this. So the way it works is you pass it a flavor name, which can be one of these. And so just to sort of put this into context, for those of you that don't know me, I used to work at Canonical, used to lead the desktop team over there. Hello, Takov. There we go. You have Atom running these integrations work, it turns out. So yeah, I used to lead the Ubuntu desktop team over at Canonical, and this script was sort of the genesis for how we landed the Ubuntu 2110 desktop image for the Raspberry Pi. Not 2110, 2010, which was the first time that Ubuntu proper had produced a desktop image for the Raspberry Pi. But this in itself is based on work that I've been doing in the community for many years. So the change that I made at that time, in order to accelerate the pace at which we could iterate...
Thank you for the follow, Scouting Nate.
Thanks, Scouting Nate, I appreciate that. In order to iterate the speed at which we could develop on this, is we actually ingested the server images as a starting point, because that gives us, like, it means we don't have to use deb bootstrap, which is what I used to do in the past to sort of create a base OS. So I've got some helper functions here. We'll come back to those in a minute. This one is the most interesting, which we'll get to. But the first stage is dead simple. Make sure you've got all of the tooling installed in order to actually, run this build process. So the key things in here, we don't actually use dev bootstrap anymore. And I can also see I'm going to need to go through this script and get it shell check compliant as well. So the key things in here are QEMU user static and systemd container. So ostensibly the way that this works is QEMU user static does syscall translations. So that gives me the mechanism to run ARM instructions on an Intel PC. And then systemd container, if you're familiar, is systemd-nspawn, which is like a lightweight container system that's part of systemd. So the way this whole thing works is it creates a container using systemd that is an ARM container, so a foreign architecture, and then QEMU user static does the system call translation in order to run things inside that container in order to build the images. So it's a massive oversimplification, but that's basically how it works. And I suppose this function here is a wrapper that I call into repeatedly throughout the rest of this script. And this is, the most important bit of it, I suppose. So we poke into the container a name server, which is, all the ones, so that the thing can resolve out on the internet. We set the machine ID, and then we call systemd-nspawn. We tell it to ignore resolve.conf, and we actually bind to this file that we created here. We then bind the firmware directory for the Pi image inside that container. We set a host name for the container, and then the machine, and then the directory that it's mounting that container into. So this is just a helper function that means it simplifies how the rest of the script looks. So I'll just need to catch up with some of this stuff. So hey, morning Dust, how you doing? Morning Camera, welcome back. So Supercube says, speaking of microcontrollers, if I want to get something cheap and start making toy projects, what would you recommend? What Yannick says, yeah, Yannick is using, I saw it go by. What's the microcontroller that you're using? They're like €2 or something you can do. Oh, you're using the Pi Pico. What's the other? What's the ESP8 something or other? They're pretty cool too. Anyway, so that's the most important function, nspawn there. So then we have this unpack stage, and I think what this does, looking at it, this this takes the server image and calculates the offsets and then extracts all of the data out of it, basically. So it creates a series of directories, and those directories are then used by the systemd container. So this is just unpacking the image, which is a disk image, and then copying all of the assets out into a place that we can then use the container on. So this apt stage, which is the bit that runs next, you'll notice that this first bit is basically, so nspawn is the thing that jumps into that container, and then it runs whatever follows afterwards. So it jumps inside the container and then runs a big apt remove, and this is basically all of this stuff is all of the server stuff that you don't need in a desktop image, because we've injected the server images as starting points. So you just go and yank a bunch of stuff out to start with. And then when we were doing, I was backporting stuff to 2004, so I had this in here. I'd put some additional bits that we needed in that PPA, which we shouldn't need any longer. So once we've yanked a bunch of stuff out, we do an upgrade, and then we install the meta package for the desktop environment. and then we install some additional utilities. The CloudInit RAM FS Grow root is the tool that on first boot in the early boot stage resizes the partition and grows the file system, and it can do that, you know, on the fly without having to do a reboot. So we have some hooks into that to manage that process, and then all of these other bits are you know, firmware and graphics stuff that the Raspberry Pi needs. I had a whole bunch of stuff. Oh, this is from ages ago. I was experimenting with H.264 that introduces some weird side effects which I won't get into now. Then we have some snap stuff. So in Ubuntu MATE there are some snaps that are seeded, and this stage is the thing that actually, well, first of all, removes some snaps that come as part of the server image, and then seeds snaps that either Ubuntu, because remember when I was making this originally we were targeting Ubuntu, but I was, you know, working on Ubuntu MATE for, you know, fun as well. And then it stages the stuff that Ubuntu MATE needs. So this is the bit that seeds all of the snaps in the image as well. So Yannick has explained it's the ESP8266 and the ESP32 are the microcontrollers that I was struggling to remember the names of, that I know Yannick has used. I've used once or twice a long way back, but so Yannick, this script isn't public at the moment. I'm debating whether or not I will do that, because although it works, there's the potential for it to do bad things. But it shouldn't do. It used to use CH roots, just plain CH roots, a long time ago. And when that went wrong, you could hose the system, but the systemd-nspawn is much more robust. So after we've seeded the snaps, we then move on to this stage 4, which is configuration, and you can see what happens at the top of here is we do this sync from, you know, the previous stage to the current stage, and that's so that, you know, if as I'm iterating on this, if I need to change something, I can go back up and rerun stages, but it has cached like the previous stages. So the first thing we do is the desktop uses Network Manager. So we put that in and we tell Netplan, which is the default for Ubuntu server, to get out of the way and let Network Manager run the show. We then have for different versions of Ubuntu, the sort of, you know, firmware configuration. So we have a README, the configuration, and then we poke around at some of the configuration that we've inherited from the server image. And this I expect to be mostly where I'll be poking around as we update this for 2110, because obviously I left Canonical 6 months or so ago, and I know things have changed in the way that the Raspberry Pi is brought up now for Ubuntu, and the scripts will need updating and refreshing to be in line with that. It will mostly be here around the KMS module that's used, I think. But what I can do is go and look at the current Ubuntu desktop image for the Pi and the server images for 2110 and see what they're actually using, and then adapt these scripts accordingly. So this is just pumping out a bunch of config, and then something that we do here is to if you have by default, Network Manager on Ubuntu has wireless power saving enabled, and on the Raspberry Pi that manifests as quite a significant performance impact on the wireless network speed. So consequently, we disable that. So we have a little override that says don't use Wi-Fi power saving on the Raspberry Pi. Hey, counter-ren or count-o-ren. Gosh, these names are so difficult to figure out the correct pronunciation. Welcome to the stream. Thanks for stopping by. So Supercuda says, I've also thought about getting Benny to CPU kits. Are they worth it? I don't know what those are. What is one of those? Okay. And Dust says, just had my call verification for our OV cert. OV. What's OV? Is this code signing? Oh, org validation. Right, okay. This is for code signing. Yeah, okay, good. Right then. Dust, by the way, is the developer of Atom, which is the tool I'm now using to automate a lot of what this stream does. Right then. Oh, well, okay. So, interesting. Benita has a kit to build 6502 working computer on breadboard. Interesting. So I'm a massive fan of the 6502, or specifically the 6510 CPU, because I used to be a C64 developer back in the day. And I have got, once some of this Raspberry Pi stuff is done, at some point I've got all of the parts now, except for keycaps. I have all of the parts to put together my fully FPGA implemented Commodore 64. So, thanks for the balls. So, yeah, I'll soon be working on that, which should be good fun. Right then. So, where are we now? We're into the configuration step. So, we add, what are we doing here? We add some additional... Oh yeah, we create the OEM configuration user. So the way that Ubuntu works on the Raspberry Pi is, if you've ever installed Ubuntu, you might be familiar, there's an OEM mode, which means you can install Ubuntu and then on the next boot, it actually says, who are you, where are you from, what's your username and password, and does like that first boot setup. And this is designed for, you know, the likes of Dell, HP and Lenovo to ship Ubuntu on their laptops. And when you get your new computer and you open it and turn it on, you know, it's a first boot experience that, you know, people are familiar with. So instead of like baking in usernames and passwords into the Raspberry Pi images for Ubuntu desktop, we reuse the OEM tooling to give a user a first boot experience. And what this is doing here is setting all of that up. So it creates the OEM user account, then installs all of the tools that are, you know, part of that experience, configures the slideshow, and creates the appropriate directories and what have you for all of that to work. So all of this is just basically making the first boot experience function. Then I've got some bits in here specifically for Ubuntu MATE. Oh, these are just some overriding some of the defaults to optimize things a bit better for the Raspberry Pi. So in terms of, you know, graphics overhead. And then we create some additional groups for things like GPIO and I2 squared. I squared, oh dear, honestly. I haven't had enough tea this morning. So, and then after this is a little trick if you're not familiar. If you create a script in this directory named adduser.local, every time adduser runs, this is invoked. So what this means is the OEM setup process will ask you for a username and password, and when the system creates that user as part of the first boot experience, it will call adduser.
Thank you for the follow,
which in turn will automatically add your user to these groups to access all of the capabilities that the Pi offers on the video core SoC without you having to run as root in order to do that stuff. So that's the purpose of all of this. I know who you are. Thanks very much. Thanks very much for the follow. How are you? How's Yuru going? Right then. So that's what's going on there. And then this is just creating the FS tab. And you can see here we have this additional thing. And this is what instructs that package I mentioned in order to automatically resize the partition on the first boot. So that's you know what we're doing here. And the no access time is just a slight sort of performance benefit. So that's like poking configuration inside that image that we're making. Oh, I'm pleased to hear you're doing well. That's good. And then we've got some cleanup here. So we've obviously installed packages, removed packages, and all that sort of stuff. So what this does is basically mop up anything that doesn't need to be there anymore. So this is just hoovering up, you know, stuff so that you get a pristine image come out the other side. Then this step image is actually now taking what is basically two directories and then merging all of that together and building an actual image out of it. So, you know, this is, you know, copying some data around and ultimately, where do we get to? Yeah, so this doesn't actually... Hang on, I need to remind myself how this works. Oh, yes, it's a block device. Okay, so yeah, that's fine. So yeah, it makes a file that it treats as a file system, two file systems, and it copies all of the data that we've prepared in the container into this, and we therefore get an image at the end of it. And then we generate a hash for that, and we sign it as well. This is so when I upload these things to the Ubuntu MATE server, there's a hash to prove the integrity, and there's a signed key from me to tell you that it's authentic. So I think that's it. And then here we've just got some command to passing to figure out what image are we basing off and what flavor are we building for. So that's kind of it. And then we've got, you know, 3 flavors that we support. This is setting up a bunch of the initialization for the variables. Nothing particularly special there, and that's it. So it's not too complex, but hopefully that makes sense. Signed, built, uploaded, it's yours. Oh, what? Explain more, Dust. What's that? Right. Oh, I see. Yes, I follow now. I understand what you're driving at. Signed, sealed, and delivered. Indeed. Right then. So that's how the script operates, and I think what we could do is actually like kick it off. So if I go here, I did download earlier a bunch of images. Let's see how big they are. So here's the actual desktop image itself. Here's the pre-installed server image for 64-bit ARM and 32-bit ARM. So let's do that. Can't remember the okay, so I need to be root. It helps if... Oh, that's why. I put new keycaps on this keyboard, and this shift I've managed to put the stabilizer on back to front, so it actually doesn't work, so I can't enter my password when I use that shift key. I need to fix that later. So there we go. So it's flavor. So we're going to be making Ubuntu MATE, and then image, and then we will take the 64-bit image to start with. And we'll press buttons and see what we've got here. So, oh, that's not a valid. So this is actually the script doing the right thing. So the script has picked up the fact that I haven't uncompressed that you need an uncompressed image. So we'll do that first. This just saves some time because XZ is quite an expensive compression algorithm. So I wrote this into the script so that you decompress the image once rather than having to sort of go through that every time you want to build an image, because it burns. I mean, this is a fairly punchy machine, and it's the CPU is gone out to 4.6 gigahertz on all cores to unpack that. So right then, let's run that again. Oh, I meant to do that. There we go. So the first thing it's doing is installing some of those tooling. So we can see QEMU user statics being pulled in and systemd container. And here we can see it's looking at the image and it's finding the partitions in those images, and it's basically rsynced those oh, hello, what's this? That can't be good. Subprocess something or other. What on earth could that be? That'll need looking into. Can't open something. Okay. That's new. New since the last time I ran this anyway. But this is this up here copied all of the data out of the image into directories that the containers now use. And at this point here, let's just see, failed with error code 100. So I am going to have to poke around and find out why that doesn't work, because that's bad. It's going to prevent things from working. Anyway, further down here, we're obviously installing. So I think it's the thing that actually sucks out all of the server stuff has failed to operate here. This was, yeah, this would have wanted to remove a bunch of stuff, which didn't happen. So that's not good. And now what it's doing is it's installing everything that the Ubuntu MATE desktop requires. And this is one of the advantages of, you know, doing this stuff on Ubuntu with Ubuntu building and only publishing packages that work for all of the supported architectures. It means that, you know, you can do this sort of thing. All of the stuff that I work on is available for ARM. And now, of course, RISC. So this obviously failed miserably because it got here. So there's something here that it really doesn't like. Open. No such file. Cannot open. Where the heck is that? So this is going to clearly need some debugging, because I don't know what is causing that failure condition, and I'll have to go and poke around in order to determine what that is. I've never seen this message at all. I imagine it's coming from within the container. Anyway, consequently, a bunch of the stages have failed to work. And that's clearly not going to work. So that's curious. And obviously I can't build an image or anything. Let's just try and run that from, well, let's see, what stage did it get to before it fell over? So if we just take a little look back up here. This copied out the boot and root and then got to stage 1 by the looks of it. Oh, here we go. Spawning into stage 2. Okay, so let's just take a look at our whoops. Let's just take a look at the script. So I think it did that bit, obviously, and it did this bit, and then it fell over about here. So let's try and isolate this. Let's just disable these other stages. Save that. And go and run stage 2 again. Just on its own. So it will start by copying from the previous stage. So it will always be in the same state as it enters this stage. So it does look like that is being triggered from the container. Why though? I'm gonna have to dig into this one. So that's all of my stuff that was queued up for install, which didn't obviously work because ahead of this all of the removal should have happened, and they didn't. Oh, some of it did. Okay, let's just run that again. And let's watch what happens. So immediately reading state information, and then we immediately get into this error condition here. And it comes back with a fail. I wonder if I'm going to have to go back to using dev bootstrap, because this is almost certainly because there's a whole bunch of preceded stuff in the image that it doesn't like inside the container. So maybe I'll have to investigate that. An error occurred during the signature. The repository is not updated. Interesting. That's worrying in itself as well. I wonder if it's not able to get out of onto the network. I don't see. Well, this is going to take a little bit of poking around. Anyway, I've explained the sort of the mechanism by which this should work. But what I will also need to do is I'll need to have a Raspberry Pi that is usable, and I think I'm going to need to update the firmware in mine. So let's have a little think about doing that. Because...
Thank you for the follow, Vinny_1234Z.
Hey Vinny, thanks very much for the follow and welcome to the stream. So, hey King Egypt. Right then, so let's just have a little think about this. I've got the Pi, an SD card and a card reader. So we'll just jam that in here. Hopefully the right way around. I've got it right, excellent. Stick that in the front of the PC. And then if we move to this view, we can use disks, and there's the drive, and we can restore a disk image of the server image. I think we'll do. Let's do a 64-bit server image. Why have I got... Interesting. Right, okay. Let's do the pre-installed server image. I may as well go with the decompressed version. Okay, start restoring. Restore. There you go. So that'll dump that image and then we'll boot the Pi off it, and hopefully I'll be able to run through the firmware update process. Oh, will I? Probably not actually. I don't have wired Ethernet here. Maybe I should use the desktop version. Get on the Wi-Fi. Oh well. Let's see how far along we get. How's progress going with eliminating screen tearing on the Pi 4? Well, the ultimate solution for that is when the full KVM driver is available on the Pi, and I haven't looked at what the current state of that is for a while. But if that's available, then that will be the solution, since that frees itself from the video core stuff in as much that it can use all of the traditional Linux APIs and drivers and what have you. Right, so that's done. Let's eject that, close this, go to the overhead view. Oops. So here's our card. We'll just stick that in the front of this Pi, which goes under there. Okay. Right, so the way I do this is like that. It's the easiest way, in my opinion, to do this. So this is connected to wireless dongles on the back of this Pi. We've got wireless dongle for the keyboard and the mouse. That's what we're doing there. So that should have power. So let's try turning this on and see what we get. Okay, well, something came up. That looks like the device is going to boot. Hey, Ivan, welcome. Can we watch this? What does that say? Broadcast later. You can on Twitch. There'll be a VOD on Twitch for a couple of months, yes. Thanks for the follow, by the way. And Cody asks, how many Raspberry Pis away are we from having enough? Hey, for Looping Bash. I like that name. Very good. Welcome to the stream. Thanks for coming. So that's something I've been toying with in my mind. I obviously maintain the snap of OBS, and I have put some provisions in there for it to be aware that it's building on ARM, but I've never actually tried it. So maybe I should. I'm in the way. Look, I can't do anything about that. Right, that's inconvenient. I will log in. Hang on, I'll just turn the chat back on over here as well. Pushing the right button. So I can't remember actually. I haven't actually. Oh, here we go. It's doing the whole bring up. Okay, there we go. That was it. We're just waiting for Ubuntu to do its thing. So it's generating keys. I think Cloud Init is running at this point. Oh, in fact, it is. You can see it on the screen there. So this is doing some bring up for Ubuntu. And King Egypt is asking what make are those keyboards. So whilst this is doing Cloud Init stuff, I will go here. So this small one is an Asus Falchion, and it's a 65% keyboard, I think. And I really like this. If you want a wireless keyboard, that it can be wired as well. It has all the bits on the back, so you can see there's USB-C and power, and the little dongle goes in the back there. This is terrific, and it has this slider here that you can use as a volume slide. It all works in Linux, and you could even change the RGB without actually having to have software. It's got key bindings, do all of that. This is, I guess, the matching mouse. This is an Asus Pugio 2. There we go. And again, that's wireless. These work terrifically. Very happy with them. I use these as my second keyboard for this sort of thing because I can just plug them in wirelessly, and they're small and they stay out of the way. But then, as you can see, you can probably guess there's a bit of a, well, in particular, Empire thing going on in this room. If you've seen previous streams where I've had the camera going around, there's a whole bunch of Star Wars memorabilia and trinkets around here. And these are limited edition keyboards, and this is a Razer Black Widow Lite, which is the Trooper themed version. And a couple of days ago I replaced all the keycaps on this keyboard. I've got some more work I want to do on it, but this is a Razer Black Widow Lite, and this is the Razer Artemis matching mouse, and that obviously matches my whole, you know, nerdy Star Wars thing that I've got going on here. Right then, how are we doing? Have we got let's actually use the right keyboard. So have we got the thing up yet? No, it's still doing its thing. I wonder if this is trying to reach the internet and there is none, and that's why it's taking a long time. Oh, something happened there. I think it's supposed to ask me for my preferred password at some point, so we'll just wait a moment. So for looping bash, I do like that name. Also, you're in good company here. I do lots of stuff with bash. I usually start with bash just for the lols. I love programming in bash. It's good fun. So yeah, if you like seeing nutty stuff in bash, we do plenty of that here. Occasionally I use proper languages because you know, you hit the limits of what's reasonable. So Cody says, I keep trying to pitch the OBS team to make a light version specifically for ARM boards. I don't know that it needs to be light. I think there are enough ARM boards out there that are low cost and powerful and could probably run OBS. It's whether or not, in the past I have made Raspberry Pi optimized versions of FFmpeg. I know that's been like well documented for many years. And I would be interested to see on a Raspberry Pi with an FFmpeg for the Pi with the accelerated encode and decode, whether or not it could actually, you know, OBS properly. There we go. I'm just going to do something so I can actually see what's going on here. I can't. Oh, I can actually trivially move myself, can't I? So let's just do this. Let's just do that. Grab myself and I'll just do that. There we go. So we can see what's going on. So it's asking for the current password. So it is Ubuntu the first time. And then it asks for a new password. And my password is test, by the way. You must choose a longer password. How tedious. Security's getting in the way of my favourite password. Okay. What's that going to be then? Oh no, this is the keyboard with the working shift, so I can just put in a longer. There we go. There we go. Hopefully that's agreeable. Yeah, it seems to like that. Okay, so RPI EEPROM update. I think this requires internet connectivity, and oh, okay. Well, let's see. Okay, well, this is clearly update available, it says. Okay, how do I actually make it do the update then? I thought... what was that telling me? RPi... Oh, what's this? So, oh, I've missed a bunch of chat. I do apologise. Right, let's just roll back and see. Let's just flip back here for a moment, and let's just catch up on what I missed. Sorry. So yeah, Cody's talking about ARM on OBS on ARM, maybe an OBS appliance image to go with the consoles. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. There'd be a bunch of work there. I'm not ruling it out. I have had it in the back of my mind for some considerable time of building, you know, a Pi version of OBS. We'll see how we go. We can have a go at FFmpeg as the first port of call and see how we get on with that. So Cody says, you think the issue with OBS on ARM boards is that you'll pretty much have to not only make the GUI less resource eating, but also recode it to not tank the hardware as well. I don't know. I don't think the OBS UI is particularly CPU intensive. It's, you know, it offloads all of that compositing to, you know, the GPU if possible. The problem is how much of the GPU acceleration is available on the different ARM boards. So yeah. Sandstorm asks, where is my t-shirt from? Okay, this is from the Ubuntu France community, and this was the t-shirt they made for the Ubuntu 2004 Focal Fusa release. That's where that came from. Sleepy Eyes Vince, yes, you know my password. Wimpy, you mentioned a really good bash book on the podcast. Do you remember the name? I do. I tell you what, I will put something in chat. I've been starting, I get asked questions like this periodically. So I have created this page. I need to type on the right keyboard. I'm just going to put this in chat. In fact, actually, I've got a chat command for this. There we go. So I've been starting to put together my kit list. So that if you head over there, you'll find the gear I use at home and here to do this streaming stuff. I'm going to put other stuff in there. After this, I'll go and put that book in that kit list so that you can find it. Because I keep being asked what camera, what mic, and I thought it'd be easier if I can just put it in one place. So that's what I started doing that last night. So I'll stick a books section in there after this stream and add that. It's called Bash Pro Scripting or something like that. I forget the title exactly, but I'll stick it in there. Okay. Have I heard news regarding the Linux challenge? I have to say they have some wins and loses, but their dedication and expectations are formidable. I have been following their sort of WAN show discussion around it. Honestly, that's a topic in its own right. I think the Linux community needs to grow up a little bit. They are approaching this with some high expectations because they are PC enthusiasts and they have all of their current Edge hardware all working delightfully on Windows, and they're coming at Linux anew, and they are bumping into all the rough edges that exist, and we are being naive and dishonest if we don't acknowledge that there are rough edges on desktop Linux. And for those of us that have been running desktop Linux for a very long time, such as myself, I probably don't know what the difference is in a Windows experience on modern hardware versus a Linux experience. I probably am not aware of what I might be missing out on, or what is maybe better implemented in terms of hardware support. So I think we should treat this as an opportunity to get some objective feedback on the state of desktop Linux and how it compares to the mainstream operating systems. And I think we should stop telling them they're doing it wrong, because I know they've had a lot of that feedback, and use this as an opportunity to learn something. So I've deliberately not got involved. I think that these people that have reached out and said, I'll help you install insert name of my distro, don't understand what they're trying to do. They are really trying to approach this almost clean room. You know, it doesn't scale to have a developer of a distro handhold every user through the onboarding process, and if your distro requires that, you're doing it wrong. So I think people that were reaching out to offer them like a white glove service in order to get the best experience of their distro, that's a very dishonest way to actually position your work if that's what was required. And you know, I found it fascinating hearing them talk the other day, because they're trotting out the names of software and packages that, you know, Linux enthusiasts are familiar with, and it's kind of nice to hear a mainstream tech channel talking our language. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think we're going to take some knocks on the way, and I think that's perfectly fine. And I hope the people that work on projects that are going to have been used and maybe critiqued by Luke and Linus are mature enough to take it for what it is, which is fair and honest feedback, and improve as a result. So that's my take on it. I think it's a really interesting exercise, and it's generated a lot of conversation. But they don't have to like desktop Linux, you know, and they don't have to say nice things, and they don't have to do the things the way that we would expect people to do stuff. But I'm very much looking forward to what they uncover and learning from it. So hopefully, as a bit of a monologue, but that's where I stand on this. Yeah, so I agree, Linux Paul. I think they've been pretty balanced. And of course, the entry point for this is they've got modern, current hardware, lots of Thunderbolt. I mean, I use Thunderbolt stuff at home, and I have done for years. And I know what those warts are on, you know, desktop Linux for using Thunderbolt devices. I've just adapted to, well, this is how you do it on Linux, and their expectations will be different because they will have a more seamless experience on Windows, undoubtedly. So yeah, I think they've approached this very fairly, and I think the criticism that's being leveled at them, and also the quote mining that's been going on the recent chat they had about it, is just ridiculous. You know, telling them that they're holding it wrong is absolutely the wrong response. And the Linux community, all of it, needs to not be so precious about their feelings. You know, just get over it. The criticism is going to be fair and reasonable. We need to use it as an opportunity to do better. And we're having somebody that's telling us how we could do better as well. So let's just scrolling through the chat. Sorry, plenty of good feedback to be taken on board. Yes, Sleepy Eyes Vince. Yeah, and you know, I suppose one thing that maybe they're not considering so much. I'll be interested to see what distros they've ended up using. I think Linus has landed on Manjaro now, and Luke on Mint. It's interesting that neither of them have gone for a distribution that has like a commercial Linux vendor behind it. who does put effort into some of the rough edges that they've encountered. And I wonder if maybe they'd do this again in a year and use those commercially backed versions to see how their experiences differ, or maybe not even a year. I mean, it's a big ask. They're busy people. They're doing this for a bit of fun, in entertainment and exploration, but they've got a job to do, and that revolves around Windows ostensibly. So, you know, asking them to keep, you know, learning the Linux stuff is going to be hard to put on them, I think. Yeah, exactly, Takov. We're aware of where the rough edges are, and we're either blind to them now, or we know what the workarounds are. And I think just assuming that people coming into this are immediately assimilated into the, oh, well, this is how you fix screen tearing on NVIDIA GPUs, and just know instinctively that you need to enable cool bits and go and, you know, twiddle these flags. That's an unreasonable expectation. And certainly not consistent with how you do it on Windows. I did not like them to begin with, but I respect their way of doing the challenge. I watch Linux tech tips from time to time. I subscribe to the channel and I just watch those videos that look interesting to me. Thanks for following, and welcome to the stream. So so Buzzy Mick says, sorry, what's happening? We just got sidetracked by a conversation about the Linux Tech Tips Linux challenge that they're undertaking. Yeah, I wish I had a podcast to talk about this stuff on. Obviously, we canned the Ubuntu podcast recently, and I've said to Mark and Alan, oh man, I really wanted to talk to you about M1 Max, and now I really want to talk to you about, you know, the Linux challenge over there, but you know. Receiving criticism. Yeah, it's called growth. Yes, Sleepy Eyes Vince. Yeah. Those are all a bunch of hippies anyway. And actually, that's the other thing that I was going to get at. You know, they've chosen community developed and supported distros. And I think that Linux users set their expectations accordingly. You know, when something is created out of passion and a hobby project, I think Linux users are a bit more forgiving of some of the rough edges that they encounter, because they know they didn't pay $150 for it, or, you know, whatever the going price of Windows, or, you know, well, Windows basically, because macOS is bundled with the hardware. So, you know, the expectations are different, but they're not approaching it like that, which is also fair, because what they're trying to do is take a gaming experience on Windows and see how it compares on Linux, and that does sort of imply decent GPU, current hardware, current gaming devices. And I don't know what the issues were. I was tempted to get in touch when I heard Linus talking, oh, Linus, he goes by, doesn't he? Not Linus. When I heard Linus talking about having difficulty getting OBS up and running, because I was like, well, that's something I know a bit about. And he did talk. He said, in the end, I got the plugin working, but I didn't use a traditional Arch package. I can't remember if it was a Flatpak or a Snap. And it was hearing him saying things like, you know, Flatpak and Snap, and knowing that there's a difference between the AUR and the packages that exist in the official Arch repos, or what Manjaro provides as the rebuilds from that. It was like, well, they're speaking our language. They've clearly invested themselves to some considerable extent that they can speak fluently about all of this stuff. So yeah, but I think they made an interesting statement which I didn't agree with, which is I think they made some generalization, which is if you're gaming on Linux, you're using Lutris. And I thought to myself, well, I think every Linux gamer knows what Lutris is, but I've never used Lutris ever. I just have Steam and I run everything through Steam. You know, that's how I do it. I've never used Lutris. So the fact that they keep sort of falling back to that is interesting, but maybe that's because I've not come from Windows and have physical media of any Windows games, which I think is where Lutris provides a solution. So I think they've got like licenses and they're used to using game launchers from the various vendors, which I've never done because I only returned to PC gaming when Steam came to Linux. I played games on consoles, in the wilderness years. So yeah, I say it's an interest. It's fascinating, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they have to say. Even though some of it is going to be harsh criticism for sure. Right then. Let's see now. So Omif says they missed the podcast. Yeah, you never know. We might do something. I mean, we're all I'm collaborating with Popey on a thing I can't talk about, and Mark is collaborating with myself and Yannick on QuickMU, and specifically the GUI for QuickMU. And this was kind of why we stopped doing the podcast, because we wanted to work on other stuff, and the podcast was eating up so much of our time that we weren't able to do that. So shame after 14 years for it to come to an end, but it has freed our time up, and it was interesting how quickly we defaulted into getting involved in the stuff that we wanted to be doing, in our spare time. And it's interesting, I noticed that Mark is most active on a Tuesday evening in the Discord talking to Yannick, which is when we would have traditionally been recording the podcast. Yeah, but Yannick, if somebody's coming to Linux, how do you learn? How do you know where the communities are, or that communities are a thing? When I was learning how to do the macOS stuff, just type in search queries and find things and read. It was ages before I figured out there was a community around the particular topic that I was interested in. Oh, they said I wasn't streaming. How cheeky. Hello, Esme. Welcome back. How are you today? So, yeah, we've gone way off topic from what I intended to talk about here, but there you go. We did at least do a run through of how these scripts are going to build the Raspberry Pi image. I think I'll figure out whatever that issue was and circle back to things another time. Well, I think we'll park the Raspberry Pi stuff for today, because we covered that in like the first half hour, and now we've got into quite an interesting conversation around the Linux challenge over at LTT. So Tactical Pew says, I think that associating gaming in Linux to only Steam is a bit weird. Why is that? That's an interesting statement. Explain. Like I said, I only got into PC gaming again as a result of Steam on Linux, so that is kind of my... I do have stuff from Humble Bundle, but then again, that's always Steam keys, and therefore it's in my Steam library. And there's enough games in Steam for me. It's a bit like a platform choice. If you're on PS5, there's some games that are cross-platform, and there's some games that are platform exclusive. And I've kind of been thinking about Linux gaming in the same way. My platform of choice is Linux, and therefore I can only play the games on my PC that are available for Linux, which is still a lot of games. In fact, a significant more games than I will ever be able to play. Even if, that means that some games I may not be ever able to play. And if you've come from Windows, that would be, a problem for a lot of people, because the games that they have and that they're used to playing aren't available. But because I've only ever played through Steam, that's like my window on Linux gaming. Yeah, I do have some DRM-free Humble titles. I haven't bought Humble Bundle for a while, but I did used to. Okay, interesting. So Yannick says he had no difficulty building impish 32-bit. Okay, well I'll dig into this and I'll see what the issue is. Omniv says they also like GNOME Mahjong. We should start a digital lug meeting. Should we? We could do that. We could do that in the Discord, I think. Actually, we've got a community centre there. We could do something like that. I miss lugs. I don't miss driving to lugs, but I miss that social aspect of lugs. That's why I've got back involved with Linux Unplugged podcast again, because that was my lug for many years. And now we're not recording the podcast, which was the Ubuntu podcast was recorded on the same day at the same time as Linux Unplugged. It now means I'm able to do that again, which is nice to reconnect with that community. Okay, fair enough. Well, I'll catch up with you in Discord after, Yannick, and we can compare notes, see if we can figure out what caused things to fall over. Who's done this, Yannick? There you go. So I've done a bunch of work to automate and polish things in the OBS side of things, and I titivated stuff in Twitch. So I think I've added little emotes to all of those channel point things, which was fun. So I wrote a script to use FFmpeg and ImageMagick in order to scan into the video stings for those and automatically alpha them and resize in the various resolutions that Twitch requires. I haven't done all of them, but yeah. I need to get back to gaming. I'm missing Hotshot Racing, big style. I really want to get back into that, but the multiplayer's not working. Oh, crikey, look how exciting. This is for when it's all going wrong, Yannick. So they may need to fix Hotshot Racing. Okay, so it's not a Steam thing, it's specifically an HSR thing. Okay. Well, yeah. So where were we? Let's just head back. I can't even remember what I was doing. I was doing something on the server image here. We were going to do, I think the issue here is that this doesn't have a network connection, so I can't do an update. Oh, it says it's up to date. Update available. Use Raspy config. I don't think that exists on Ubuntu, does it? No. Okay. So if I just reboot, does that mean the update has happened? Okay. Oh, that whizzed by lightning quick. How do I even know if my firmware is updated? I can't remember any of this stuff. You need to update to enable booting from SSD. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Okay, I suppose I can move my face back to where it should be, which I think is something close to that. There we go.
Thank you for the follow, Blaster.
Hey, Blaster Linux. Thanks for following. So, what's this doing?
Thank you for the follow, Mesusef32.
Wow, that's a complicated name, Mesusef. Thanks very much for the follow. I appreciate that. So we've got the thing going there. Can I remember what password I just gave it? I think I can. Can I? Yeah, I can. Okay. So at the start of the stream, we ran through how all of this is going to work, how it's going to build the images. I think I'll take this away as something to debug. So hopefully tomorrow we can pick up on this and actually start to generate some of the images. And maybe, what day is it today? Thursday. So I may well be streaming with work later. I'm not sure yet. That's over on Slim DevOps, which is more container shenanigans over there. But I can't remember if we're going to do that today or tomorrow. But in any case, I'll be. Oh, that's the wrong camera view. Let's try this one. So yeah, I'll just take a little poke around and see what's going on with that build script and see if we can't iron that out. And then the next one of these I do will actually go through building out that image and starting to test it, and get that tested for 32-bit and 64-bit implementations, and then do things like see if it's possible to run it on a Raspberry Pi A or not. I don't think it will be due to the memory constraints. And then we've got a Raspberry Pi 3 here to test on as well, make sure that it runs okay in 1 gig of RAM still. Because, you know, I like to test on a collection of the supported Pis in order to determine what's a reasonable expectation. So if we find
Thank you for the follow,
that it can't run comfortably in 1 gig of RAM on a Pi 3, then we'll drop that from the release targets. Carlo, thanks. Oh, sorry, that was Crossbow. Thanks very much for the follow. Welcome. So yeah, so the next couple of streams will be getting that build process working, spitting out images, testing them, and once I'm happy that all of that is working nicely, we'll get those images released to the download pages so everyone else can grab them and give them a go. And once we've got to that point, then we'll shift over to these other Raspberry Pi projects that I've got here, which initially I definitely want to start with making one of the games consoles that I was going through the other day. What should I start with? I think the NES is probably the one to start with, given that I've got a couple of NES cases and a couple of controller options there. And I never had a Nintendo Entertainment System, so I'm not super familiar with the games. So I'd like to sort of explore some of the games there, get that in a position where I can actually start using it. Because what I want to do, I love retro gaming. I know I play on this channel, when we play on a Sunday night, we play contemporary games. But I love retro games, and that's what I play for fun when I have a few minutes, because they're very pick up and put down. So I want to start building out these consoles so I can start going back to some of the games that I enjoyed either at my friends' houses on their, you know, consoles back in the day, or, games that I had. Excuse me. Games that I had, or specifically games I really enjoyed in the arcades, which is where most of my game playing was done, you know, as a teenager. So Yannick says he's going to be streaming tonight, maybe some Atom shenanigans. Okay, actually, depending on how I'm doing on my soldering. Is the soldering connected with Atom in any way, Yannick? I'm going to do some Atom stuff as well, probably next week, because I'm still working on. I mean, I've automated a ton of stuff. I need to do a stream where I talk about some of the other automations I've done recently, because obviously I stream from 2 locations and share configuration between those 2 locations. But camera and sound equipment and what have you is different. And I've managed to automate managing all of that, which I'm rather pleased with, because it saved me some time. Oh, you're doing LED strips and GPIO pins. Nice. Well, we should totally do some of that. I've got some ideas for some interesting stuff to do with Atom that now, and also it's other features that exist in OBS that have recently come to OBS. Those two things marry together really nicely. So yeah, I'm going to be working on a few things. My AV seems out of sync. Oh, really? Okay. I'll have to watch back the local recording and see what that is. I'm not. That's not been mentioned before. I'm not saying it's not happening, but I'll look into that after the stream and see if there's some sort of offset that I haven't accounted for. Right. Well, I've got a slight cough now, which I think is my body telling me it's time for another cup of tea. So, okay, Esme, thanks for the feedback. Okay, thank you for those of you that it's working fine for. That's great. But I will look. I do like to try and get those things right. Well, with that in mind, I think we'll wrap up there. If you missed the beginning of the stream, we went through the script as to how all of this stuff is built and put together, how we use an ARM container on a PC in order to build an image for the Raspberry Pi. Thanks, Buzzy Mix, for the follow. I appreciate that, and welcome to the stream. Those of you that are new here, if you go to the About page on this Twitch channel, you can find all of the ways to connect, and we have a growing community in our Discord. So that's wimpysworld.io/discord. There's nearly 2,000 Linux nerds or Linux curious people over there, and we talk about desktop stuff and dev and gaming and streaming and broadcasting, just all manner of stuff. So we're a friendly bunch. You don't have to be a full-time Linux nerd to come and join the conversation. Everyone's welcome. And Age Monkey, thanks for the follow. Welcome to the stream. But with that, I think we'll go and find somebody to raid, because I'm starting to get good at remembering to do that oh, I need to use the right keyboard. Let's move the Raspberry Pi keyboard to one side. So let's go and find someone to raid. Let's see who's doing something interesting today. What have we got here? Okay. Gosh. NFT stuff. I'm not going there. Oh, here we go. Oh, that's not English language, but that would have been ideal. First game jam. Oh, okay, interesting. Now here's somewhere we've not been before. Let's take a look here. This looks like it could be interesting.
It shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, let's go here. Right, I found where we're going to go. So let's just get this queued up. Right then, thank you all very much for coming. We're going to head over to Real 8 and some Ember development, I think is what they're working on over there. Something I've not looked at in ages. So thanks for coming. I should be back tomorrow morning, maybe this evening, definitely over the weekend. So I hope to see you all again then, and we'll be digging into this Raspberry Pi stuff in a bit more detail. So bye for now. I'll see you soon.